Crimney with a couple of thoughts, as well as Conrad. I'm rolling the dice on DK and Wandale, as both are listed as questionable. Yeah, I think they'll play. I don't get this. You know what I miss? Probable. I don't know why the NFL got rid of probable, because that was a whole lot. Questionable is like, oh, it's 50-50, I don't know. And now that's the best one you have. So I don't know why we got rid of probable. That was so nice when we lived in probable, questionable, and doubtful. You know, they never tell you that you're in the good old days until after, right? Or whatever that line is. I miss probable. And so I would assume, Conrad, that DK and Wandale would both have been listed as probable had that distinction been allowed in this silly league that we call the NFL. But I would feel comfortable with them. And honestly, I think both guys have good games. Both in the same game. Seattle going up against the Giants. Giants can't stop a nosebleed. And Seattle, like, Wandale Robinson is going to be that number one option for the Giants, which is damning with faint praise, but also Seattle gave up a bunch of yards through the air last week. So I do think that there's going to be volume and maybe some opportunity for Wandale Robinson moving forward. Crimney need a running back this week. Is it smart to pick up Eckler? Their defense had a lot of injuries. Eckler also got banged up last week, so I would check on that status if you know what? I'm here. I'm like obviously have an internet connection. So let's see how we looking Austin Eckler wise. Because McNichols came in and actually looked pretty good in replacing him. Clear to play on Sunday, so he should be good to go. That was 26 minutes ago, according to rotoballer.com. And if we cannot trust Rotoballer, who can we trust? Cut to 3 weeks from now, me working for them. But I think Eckler's an okay pickup. Yeah. If I'm looking at like desperation type moves, I think there are a couple of the pass catching option running backs that you can trust maybe a little bit more than Eckler, because Robinson's been a beast for Washington. Now, Robinson sounds like he's going to be a game time decision. So this is one of those roll the dice things that we talked about before. If Robinson's banged up, then Eckler all of a sudden becomes a really good play. And Eckler, it was a concussion for him. And obviously, like we've seen with Tua, once that button, from experience, once that button gets pushed, it's easier to push it again, but it's not the same as like an ankle injury where it just, like you can kind of tweak it or whatever. You can't tweak a concussion. So, I mean, you probably can, but you know what I am saying? Like, it's not as easily re-injured or whatever, right? Like everyone can get concussions. It's football. So, what I'm saying is, if Robinson is out, then Eckler is an amazing pickup. A couple other guys who I wouldn't mind, like I said before, Justice Hill for Baltimore is, I think, a good play. Given how close the Baltimore-Cincinnati game projects to be, I do think there are going to be some drives where Baltimore needs to throw the ball, and that ain't Derrick Henry's bag. So I think Justice Hill is actually going to get a pretty good chunk of the snaps this week, and thus a pretty good amount of the opportunities. And like I just said in the Monday night game, I think Samaje Perine has the option, just given the lack of weapons out in Kansas City, that he is going to get, I think, a few pass-catching options as well. So I would probably rank that Eckler, Hill, and then Perine, but I would maybe, if it does seem like Robinson's going to play, I would maybe flip Hill and Eckler, just for the situation that I think Baltimore is going to be in. But I do think Eckler is a pretty good play. Toxic saying here, Jonathan Taylor officially out. And so Toxic, very sneaky during the show, races out and picks up Trey Sermon in the Vampire League. And so Crimney, for you, if Trey Sermon's available in your league, I think that's a pretty good pickup as well, going up against a Jacksonville defense that, off the top of my head, I don't think they're like a stalwart against the run or anything like that. Like, Houston didn't really get to them a whole lot last week. Buffalo, I mean, just kicked the shit out of them. So they probably ran the ball for half of the game, so you don't get a good read on that one. I feel like Jerome Ford had an okay game against them, and then Miami's Miami. So you don't really have a good sense of that, but I do think that Trey Sermon has a good game. So I would maybe put him at the top of the list for those kind of desperation running backs. Conrad asking, thoughts on Cam Akers as a streamer? You have Houston going up against the Buffalo Bills. With Joe Mixon out, I think that Cam Akers has an opportunity here. He is... someone picked up Sermon already. All right, sorry, Crimney. I think, like, Cam Akers is very obviously limited by the injuries that he has had in his career. He has kind of turned into Coach told me there'd be hole here, so I run through hole here. And he is not getting anything that isn't blocked for him. The good news is Buffalo can give up a lot that isn't blocked. So I think that he is a good option as a streaming running back. It seems like running back is the topic du jour this week. I probably said that wrong. Either way, when you look at this now, the running backs that we have discussed here today, I still think I would put Sermon first. And then, boy, where would I put Akers in that whole thing? Sermon first. I do think I would probably go Akers second, just on the volume that he would be getting. And then Hill, and then Eckler, and then Pirine. But again, all of them, I think, are varying degrees of pretty good options this week. Sutton, Wandale, Higgins, and Shaheed tossed up on who to start. Boy, that is an interesting question. Like, the Raiders do give up big plays. We talked about it when we were doing that preview, where there is a play in that game against Cleveland where Amari Cooper gets an 80-yard touchdown, and everyone's celebrating, and it comes back because of a holding call. Not saying that Denver wouldn't hold or anything like that, but there are at least those options available for big gains for the Denver Broncos in this game. Wandale, I think you have to start, given the situation that he is in. He's the number one wide receiver on his team, and he is the guy that I think can take advantage of where Seattle is lacking in their secondary. So I would start Wandale for sure. He would be my one in that list. Higgins, I still need to see it a little bit more, and I think Baltimore is familiar enough with the Bengals that they'll be able to figure that one out. So I would probably, and then Shaheed, we talked about it. Kansas City is good at taking away your number one option, and number two options have kind of thrived against the Chiefs so far this year. So I think Shaheed actually has a pretty good day. So I would probably rank those: Wandale, Shaheed, Sutton, and Higgins right now. That would be how I would rank those ones. It's crazy. Who would have thought? Probably at the beginning of the year, we would have assumed Higgins would have been the bottom of that list because of how everything went. But going into training camp, who would have thought that Higgins would be at the bottom of that particular list? That's absolutely crazy. So anyway, should be a fun week. Thank you guys so much for all the fantasy questions.